Senator Houck. Senator Bellino. Mr. Chairman, you have 8 members present. There is a quorum.
Thank you so much. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the September 3rd, 2025 committee meeting minutes moved by Senator Schenck. Without objection, the minutes are adopted. And I'll make a motion to excuse absent members. There's no objection, so absent members are excused, and I know we'll be joined by a couple more folks here. I want to get us rolling today. We really want to hear from some people that have joined us, which I appreciate, to hear on a presentation on the termination of the Solar for All program and the impact of the federal budget bill on Michigan energy costs. So thank you for being here today. There's obviously been a great deal of activity since the beginning of the new administration in Washington, D.C., a lot of impacts to Michigan in all areas. And since this is our Energy and Environment Committee, we believe there's some areas that require a deeper dive and some greater attention to some important matters that are impacting Michigan's economy and Michigan's energy future. So with that, what we're going to do is start with a presentation from the Department of Energy, Great Lakes and Environment. And I believe from the department we have these folks joining us. Alessandra Carrion, the Chief Climate Officer, Joy Wang, Director of Michigan Solar for All, and Sydney Hart, Legislative Liaison for EGLE. And we really appreciate your taking the time and effort to join us here today. And I think your slides are up, and so whenever you're ready, we are looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for being here today.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about Solar for All termination. As was mentioned, I have Alessandra and Joy here with me today to talk about the termination and the impacts that we're seeing across the state, and we'll likely continue to see resiliency suffer because of the termination of the program. And so I'm going to hand it over to our team to kind of walk through the presentation that we have for you today, and then we'll be available for questions should there be any after the presentation.
Thank you. Chair McCann and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. And I also want to thank you all for your leadership and attention to this issue as it addresses critical aspects at the heart of Michigan's energy future. I'm Alessandra Carrion. I'm the Chief Climate Officer at EGLE's Office of Climate and Energy. And prior to joining EGLE, I was appointed to the Michigan Public Service Commission by Governor Whitmer. So I'm very grateful to serve in a capacity that allows me to support and advance an affordable, resilient, and clean energy future for all Michiganders. I'll provide a brief introduction that explains why Michigan pursued the Solar for All program before allowing Dr. Joy Wang, Director of Solar for All at EGLE, to share more details on the impacts of the cancellation of the significant award of $156.12 million to the state of Michigan. Executive Directive 2020-10 committed Michigan to achieve economy-wide carbon neutrality no later than 2050. This executive directive assigned responsibility to the Office of Climate and Energy to develop a plan for and oversee implementation of economy-wide decarbonization through the My Healthy Climate Plan. Carbon neutrality is essential if we wish to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change resulting from extreme weather events. And it's also an opportunity to spur sustainable economic development and create good-paying jobs, and to protect and improve the health of Michiganders. To do this, the My Healthy Climate Plan established the goals shown on the slide for 2030 to guide the state towards carbon neutrality. Our 2023 clean energy laws helped institutionalize some of these goals, in particular Public Act 235, which requires electric providers to meet a clean energy standard of 100% by 2040 and sets a statewide energy storage target of 2,500 megawatts by 2030. Solar for All assists with several of the My Healthy Climate Plan goals and enables our clean energy legislation. For example, Solar for All links to the plan's goals to clean the electric grid, thereby assisting in achieving the requirements under Public Act 235 and to pursue a just transition in reaching carbon neutrality by 2050. Our state's 2 largest investor-owned utilities have also committed to net zero carbon emissions. Consumers Energy has established a net zero target by 2040, and DTE has set its target for 2050. Beyond their decarbonization targets, both Consumers and DTE Electric's own utility distribution system plans explicitly highlight the role of distributed energy resources, or DERs, like rooftop solar systems or battery storage, in achieving reliable and resilient electric grids for Michigan. Solar for All would have provided significant resources to contribute towards the accelerated installation of DERs. In fact, the many benefits realized from the Solar for All program are possible because these DERs in turn enable clean, affordable power for households that would otherwise face barriers to installation. Thus, this approach is not only in line with the My Healthy Climate Plan, but with our state IOU's own goals. So the Solar for All projects align with utility planning in other significant ways. Installing DERs can relieve peak demand, strengthen the grid, improve reliability, and lower overall system costs. The projects you'll hear about today would have direct utility bill impacts resulting from program implementation, not to mention reliability improvements for projects where solar generation would be coupled with battery storage. The cancellation of Solar for All puts Michigan climate and justice commitments at risk. While our clean energy laws will help ensure we stay on track to meet the My Healthy Climate Plan targets, and while our state remains committed to advancing distributed solar and storage as part of our climate strategy, the best laid plans are only as effective as their actual implementation. Solar for All would have been a significant catalyst to help us fulfill our climate plan and reach collective net zero targets faster and cheaper, improving the lives of Michiganders who need these benefits the most. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Joy Wong to describe Michigan's Solar for All program.
Thank you. So low-income Michiganders' need for electric bill relief was also another motivation for EGLE to apply for the My Solar for All grant opportunity. The My Solar for All interest form was put online in spring of 2024, and as part of that, we received, as of early August of this year, nearly 1,300 responses, and many of the comments shared in that interest form talk about this need for relief. For instance, my kids and I are currently living with no electricity due to an outstanding electric bill of $2,200. The average monthly light bill is $500. And it's just me and my mother. She is in stage 4 COPD. The bills are so expensive, trying to do it alone. Please help. God bless you. The My Solar for All staff are passionate about this program. We understand that the solar and storage implemented by our program will help Michigan's energy and environmental goals. However, we were most attracted to the program because it leverages these technologies to provide savings to low-income Michiganders. Even in the face of the federal grants uncertainty this year, my two staff, Amber Place and Nick Depikowski, who both were onboarded in just June of this year, wanted to contribute their talents to the My Solar for All program to help low-income Michiganders achieve savings and to improve their lives. This urgent need for electric bill relief, especially for low-income Michiganders, spurred EGLE staff to work quickly to secure the My Solar for All funds and to work diligently towards deploying these projects. EGLE staff have already spent significant time dedicated to My Solar for All. In July of 2023, EGLE submitted its intent to apply for the Solar for All grant. In October of 2023, EGLE submitted that application, and it was supported by 43 letters of support. And originally, EGLE requested $250 million for this program. In July of 2024, EGLE received the grant agreement from the US EPA, obligating $156.12 million to EGLE for the My Solar for All program. And after that, staff worked to revise the work plan to that lower amount. And in December of 2024, we received approval for that revised work plan. And in February of this year, we received EPA approval on another revision to the work plan, which exited us from the planning period, which essentially meant that we were approved to implement our work plan elements without further US EPA approval. In February of this year, we began our stakeholder engagement in earnest, and our design contractors were onboarded. In April of this year, we released our Solar for Savings, My Solar for All pilot opportunities. We had 3 rounds of review set for May, June, and September of this year. Originally, we were planning to draft our program design based on the feedback that we've heard from stakeholders throughout this year and to share it out with them in August of this year to make sure that we really heard them correctly about the needs of Michigan families and communities and how My Solar for All could help. After we heard back from them, we wanted to finalize our program design in September of this year so that we could hire a program implementation contractor in December and fully kick off our program in January of 2026. My Solar for All was to install 190 megawatts of new solar generation capacity for our state. to help reduce the cost for an estimated 16,300 low-income households. It would install 22 megawatt hours of energy storage to help improve household and community energy resiliency. It was estimated to create 700 good-paying and high-quality jobs and to support Michigan's energy workforce pipeline. We also had technical assistance opportunities to help support our communities in strengthening Michigan's energy independence and resiliency. Of the $156 million awarded for My Solar for All, 75% of that was going to go towards direct project implementation of residential rooftop and residential serving community solar projects within our communities. Some of those projects would have funding for enabling upgrades that were necessary to site the solar. So these would be like roof repair, roof replacement, or electrical system infrastructure upgrades. And some projects would also receive funding for energy storage. The remaining 25% of our grant funding was dedicated toward technical assistance to our communities and for workforce training, as well as to meet programmatic needs like monitoring and compliance and program and vendor management. The first type of solar project supported by My Solar for All was the residential rooftop solar project. And these could be placed on single-family, manufactured, or multifamily homes that were either new, existing, or rented, or owned. And they didn't have to be just on the roof. They could have been placed on an outbuilding, like a garage or a shed on the property. They could be ground-mounted or even elevated in a carport type of situation. And in the households that were directly metered, that solar electricity would help reduce their total electric bill. And for the ones that were master metered, like in some of our multifamily buildings, the solar benefits would be provided in some type of non-bill benefit. But regardless of how those benefits provided, My Solar for All was supposed to provide a 20% reduction on the average residential electric bill to all participating low-income households. Residential serving community solar was the second type of solar project supported by the My Solar for All program. These projects had to be 5 megawatts AC or smaller in terms of total array size, and the low-income beneficiaries were to be in the same utility service territory as where the panels were sited. There were two types of community solar projects that we envisioned in our program. The first was front-of-the-meter projects that were not tied to a customer meter. And I think many of us, when we think about community solar, envision these arrays of solar, array upon array. And in this case, the generated solar energy would then be sold to the electric grid to provide electric bill credits to participating households, or as part of our program, they could also be provided in non-bill ways. We also envisioned behind-the-meter community solar at host sites within our communities, and these could have been our houses of worship, our local government facilities, businesses, industries, nonprofits, and other host sites within our communities, as well as our schools. And the electricity could be provided that the solar generated would then offset the host site's electric bill, and the host site would then share the benefits with low-income participants in some type of way. At least 50% or more of the benefits had to be shared with low-income beneficiaries, and for many of our pilot projects, they were aiming to share 60% or more. The host site could retain a certain percentage of that benefit for its own use. And those benefits didn't have to be provided on an electric bill. Innovative benefit sharing was allowed. So a community really had the flexibility to design a program for its low-income households that best met the needs of their community members. It could have been used for things like scholarships or workforce training, food assistance or energy assistance. Really, the community could tailor it to meet their needs. And regardless of how those benefits were shared, we were still aiming for a 20% or more reduction to the average residential electric bill. My Solar for All was unique in that we were one of the few Solar for All programs in the nation that was poised to deploy projects. With the Solar for Savings, My Solar for All pilots opportunity, we received a lot of interest from our community members on that. And we received, as of early August, 55 applications requesting over $74 million of grant funds. And we had heard that many were aiming to apply by the September 30th deadline for round 3. We had selected 13 My Solar for All pilots in the first 2 rounds of our pilot offering, with over $13 million of Solar for All grant funds committed to help realize those projects. And combined, those 13 projects would install 4.6 megawatts of solar and 1.4 megawatt hours of energy storage to benefit over 1,750 low-income households in our communities. They would provide over $430,000 of annual low-income household savings, and all of them were hoping to start construction this year so they could start providing those benefits to their community members sooner. And as of starting this year, they would have the ability to receive the investment tax credit, and that was estimated to be about $5 million across those 13 projects, which helped reduce the total grant funds required from our program to help realize these projects in our communities. There were 4 residential rooftop projects selected for our pilots and 9 residential serving community solar projects. They were throughout our state in both the Upper Peninsula and Lower Peninsula. And you can see a list of our awardees on the slide here. We had municipal organizations like the City of Cadillac and City of Benton Harbor. We had municipal utilities like Hillsdale Board of Public Utilities. We had nonprofits like the Intertribal Council of Michigan and academic institutions like Wayne State University and a house of worship, the First United Methodist Church of Holland. So really covered the breadth of organizations in our state. The My Solar for All program received a termination memo and amendment from the US EPA. Both of those were dated August 7th of 2025. As part of that, it included a stop work order. So all work on the program has stopped. We are on pause. So we were in the midst of finalizing pilot grant agreements. We were within days of signing some of those agreements. That has stopped. Round 3 of our pilot offering has stopped. Our stakeholder engagement to seek input on our program design and finalization has ceased, as well as our efforts to design and deploy the program. My Solar for All is working with Michigan's Attorney General on the termination response. The termination amendment requested a response within 21 days. The termination memo requested a response in 30 days, and we have responded to both of those. And we're working with them on further next steps. In terms of the loss of My Solar for All, I think the benefits that is demonstrated by some of our pilots really highlight what we are losing. For instance, we lose this opportunity for resiliency, and Superior Watershed Partnership, for instance, they were planning on installing solar and storage in the Upper Peninsula for residential households, and they were planning on prioritizing critical care customers. So those folks who had a family member that was dependent on electricity for medical purposes. So we lose that opportunity for our households, but also for our communities, because some of the sites were putting solar at community facilities. We have pilot awardees like Lowell Light and Power, where they were implementing the solar project, and the percentage that they were reserving for themselves, they were going to help use to reduce this upward rate pressure for all ratepayers in the community, not just the low-income households. We also have nonprofits like the First United Methodist Church of Holland, who were using their percentage of the benefits to help reduce their operation costs. And they were going to be able to do more programming for their community members because of that. And last but not least, we lose the opportunity for low-income savings for an estimated 16,300 Michiganders and their families. The My Solar for All investments, as Alessandra mentioned at the beginning, could help reduce utility investments. There's a Georgia Institute Technology study that optimized behind-the-meter solar and storage within Michigan. And they found that residential and commercial host sites can achieve significant savings from solar and storage. And for large commercial, some of those savings are quite substantial and could be almost as much as $400,000 a year. There's also a reduction in the peak demand due to these technologies. So by reducing peak demand from these installations, the need for additional expensive utility generation can be avoided, as well as other needed grid investments. Termination of My Solar for All also means the loss of a positive feedback loop for our state. My Solar for All supports low-income families to save money, and that's money that they probably would have spent on other goods and services and to support businesses within our communities. it also means the reduction of our ability to reduce the harm from electric outages. And in 2020 and 2021, there's a study that estimated Michigan lost $4.9 billion due to power outages alone. We also lose the opportunity for positive partnerships. Michigan State University received a grant to evaluate the My Solar for All program, valued at nearly $60,000. And we have had the pleasure of hosting a Hubert Humphrey Fellow who's been assisting with our program throughout this year. So we've been able to provide opportunities in terms of workforce engagement and also exchange. And for me personally, I think I was most excited about the opportunities of My Solar for All in helping low-income Michigander families. And even though that 20% reduction on the average electric bill doesn't seem like a lot of money, we estimated that to be about $400 to $450 per household per year. I personally understand how a little bit can really cause big changes in a family. So my mom was one of 6 children. Money was tight, and my grandparents didn't have money for school supplies. Thankfully, my mom was able to earn some really small scholarships to help cover the school supplies. And because of that, she was the first woman in her family to graduate from high school and college, the first person in her family to earn a doctorate degree. And because of the generosity of a donor that helped a kid with some notebooks and pencils, my mom's life was changed, and so was the path of my family. And I really wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that. So it was my hope that the My Solar for All program would really help low-income Michigander families in a similarly transformative way. And it is one reason why I worked so hard and so diligently to design a program and to try to deploy projects that would really help Michigan families that needed that help. And because I truly believe that when our families and our communities do well, our state also prospers.
Thank you, Mr.
Go ahead, Sydney, and then
Happy
we'll
to
go
take any questions.
Yep. Thank you, and thank you for that personal story. It's very moving, and I think 20% is a lot of savings, so I would not discount that in the least. Senator Pohanke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. I know that you got emotional when you had to deliver your presentation in the past tense. This would have happened if. So let me clarify. So are you saying that the Trump administration said this project's gone? Is that correct? Michigan Solar for All is gone. It's terminated.
So we received a termination memo and amendment indicating that they were terminating.
From who?
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
Under the Trump administration. Okay. And this, in an era of sky-high electric bills, and when Michigan Democrats passed our first ever climate plan in 2023 that has requirements, that requires electric providers to meet a clean energy standard of 80% by 2035 and 100% by 2040. You were ready to go. This was already being ruled out. My Solar for All. In an era of sky-high electric bills. And the grantees, the ones awarded the grant, would have saved at least 20% reduction on their electric bill if they participated. Is that correct?
So the grantees were the ones that were hosting the projects or building the projects, and as part of that, the low-income beneficiaries that would receive benefits from them would receive at least a 20% reduction on the average residential electric bill in that utility
So a
service.
20% reduction, average reduction. And so the Trump administration ripped this program away from grantees in Delta County, Wexford County, Kent County, Ottawa County, Berrien County, Hillsdale County. Is that correct? I know it's a scary era right now where if you might be afraid to even, count or to say factual things on camera.
No, we did have grantees throughout Michigan, and it included those counties, yes.
Well, this burns me up. And I'd like for the record to show that every single Republican, 5 of them on this committee, either did not show up or left during your presentation. Is that how much they care? I am burnt up over this. You're emotional. I'm pissed. This is unbelievably sad. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chang?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation and also just for the really important work that you're doing. And it is emotional, right? Because we're talking about families, we're talking about people being able to pay their bills and keep a roof over their family's head. So I appreciate the passion. I sent a letter on August 11th to the administrator of the EPA. I don't think that we ever got a response, but just really urging them to reverse course on this plan to terminate all 60 grants under this $7 billion Solar for All program. And I just wanted to say again, thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of Michigan families. I guess I had 2 questions. So one is, I know you listed that, there's about 700 jobs that we're talking about that are involved in all of these projects. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kinds of jobs are we talking about that we're potentially losing out on here in Michigan? So that was the first question. And then the second question, you may have talked about this a little bit, but if you can expand about the work that's literally already been started that has now had to stop because of the termination of the grant, like the work that people's livelihoods are depending on that were already started and no longer are receiving funding for.
In terms of the jobs that we're expecting, they would all be related to areas that would help with Solar for All. So these would not just be the technicians who'd be installing solar and storage at these facilities, but also folks working on home retrofits to help with roof repair and electricians with electrical system upgrades. And we are also interested in workforce training opportunities to try to help support more people in the trades that are necessary for projects like these to succeed, because we have heard a lot from our community members that there is just a lack of folks working in the trades, and that we really do need to strengthen the number of folks that are working there. And so we did have plans to invest in additional training opportunities there. And then in terms of our 13 pilot projects that have already been selected, we did not have the opportunity to sign the grant agreements. We were still in the final stages of clarifying kind of budget numbers, and really were just within days of signing grant agreements with the majority of them. And so it is very disappointing to be at this spot right now, because we did make commitments to award these communities and these different host sites. We know the number of households that we could have helped. We know the types of services that these programs would have been providing. And it is really a loss for Michigan and our communities, as well as our low-income families, that we can't do this. And many of these projects wanted to get started this year so that they could start providing those benefits as soon as possible. And I think many of them would have been able to do it had we been able to sign those grant agreements and implement them. As our funding was obligated to Eagle, commitments were made to us about this funding, and we definitely operated in good faith effort in trying to implement this program as best as we could and adhere to the terms and conditions of the award.
And just as a note, we do have some other testimony and stories that will come from some of the grant recipients. But Senator Shink?
Thank you. I'll try to keep it quick, but I'm upset too. And I think sometimes when we care so much, our voice cracks, and it's important to say those things, because those are the things that do really matter. So one of the things that I was thinking about when we're talking about this is that when I've been out talking with people, it doesn't matter how they vote. People like the idea of having solar on their roof. It's self-sufficiency for some, and I know not all of them were individual residential rooftops, but I want to note that I do want to again underline that I see that these were sprinkled across the state. This wasn't political. This was about getting the work done. And then I just want to remind everybody before I ask my question that this program was cut to give billionaires tax cuts that they don't need. And it's disgusting. So I guess one of the things I'm wondering, these organizations, they did real work to apply, And would they have potentially paid salaries or hired grant writers? And it seems that Eagle probably expended a fair bit of resources to make this happen. Is that the case, that people actually did expend resources to apply for this grant and try to get this thing moving, and then it's been just taken out from under us?
Yeah, all of our pilot applicants do expend quite a bit of time in, designing the projects, sizing them, and submitting the application. And we do request quite a lot of information for them to evaluate whether it's a project that we want to invest in. And so I know all of the pilot applicants did commit a lot of time to applying. We received 55 applications, and 13 of our, projects were awarded in the first 2 rounds. So they definitely did commit time there. And for many of the projects, they also included funding for staff to help monitor and implement these projects. And also for Eagle, we have 3 staff members for My Solar for All that are funded solely from these funds, and we no longer have access to that. So there are definitely staffing changes and also additional time commitments that Michigan entities have placed towards implementing and realizing these projects.
Yeah, I also wanted to observe and just note that, that slide that you have of the distribution of projects, I don't know if you can go back to that, but it does strike me that all of the Upper Peninsula was slated for these projects. So that's a pretty striking geographical representation there. So thank you very much for your testimony today. Deeply appreciated, and thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next is Jeffrey Jones, the Executive Director of Hope Village Revitalization.
Yeah, I thought it was just this one.
Welcome and good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here today. When you're ready to go,
Thank you.
we'll let you go. And I don't know if we can take the slide deck down, but
Once again, my name is Jeff Jones. I'm the Executive Director of Hope Village Revitalization. We're a place-based community organization in the city of Detroit. And Hope Village, as the name implies, is home to some very resilient and very hardworking people. I've lived in this community for over 50 years. It's my childhood home. My family first purchased property in this community in the early 60s. Hope Village is a wonderful neighborhood full of homes built primarily before 1930. And it's a community, as the name implies, has seen its share of challenges. We've built up in the aftermath of the '67 riots. We dealt with decades of disinvestment, blight, the war on crime. In 1997, our neighborhood was even impacted by a tornado. But the people never gave up. We continue to fight. And one of the common challenges that we face in our community, because it's older, is our aging infrastructure. Our neighborhood frequently goes without electricity after a storm or a major rain event. And many of my neighbors are somewhat older. And it means something different when your power goes out for 3 or 4 days and you're dependent on an oxygen machine or a health monitor that needs to communicate to your doctor. We decided to take on this challenge at Hope Village Revitalization. Our signature project so far to date has been the creation of the LaSalle Eco Demonstration Home. It's the first LEED Platinum certified residential rehab in the state of Michigan. We took a blighted property, had been through multiple rounds of foreclosure, had been firebombed, and there was even a murder in that property. We didn't tear it down, we rebuilt it to the highest degrees of sustainability. And so it sits as an example for our neighbors to see what solar panels look like on a roof. They can come in and see what high degrees of insulation can mean, what heat pump air and heat feels like. And what I'm most proud of is that for 8 months out of the year, our DTE bill is around $34. $34. When you're living on a fixed income, If you're able to reduce the utility burden, that means the difference between just living your life and thriving. So you can imagine how heartbroken I was to get this memo on a Tuesday that the Solar for All program was going away. We spent hundreds of hours on our team putting plans together, talking with community groups around the city, because our project, we were seeking to pilot by putting solar panels on the roof of 5 homes in the city of Detroit, with the goal of getting to 100 homes within the next 5 years. This was our starting point. We were ready to go. And I think the state chose us because we had a track record of doing this and pulling this off. For the past 5 years, we've been recipients of MSHDA funding for minor home repair, because you just can't put solar panel on older homes. The roofs just won't support it. So we've been vigorously trying to make sure the homes are ready for this. And we thought we were there. This was really a gut punch for us. But in Hope Village, we don't give up. We're going to continue to fight. And I hope your Republican colleagues will hear that comment from us. In Hope Village, we will fight, because it's for our people. It's for our future. Hope Village is trying to demonstrate what a 21st century neighborhood can look like. Energy resilient, energy independent, caring for one another, because that's what this is really about. Making sure that our neighbors can live the best quality of lives in their communities. I just want to thank you for this time this afternoon, for letting me share my story with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And stories are compelling, and we appreciate you sharing that with us today. Thank you for being here. Next is Mary Braun, the project manager of Solar, and Sheila Dudley, who is the project manager of Highland Park for North End Woodward Community Coalition. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today. And when you're ready, we'd be happy to hear your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Mary Braun, and I represent North End Woodward Community Coalition, or NewCC, if you're familiar with us. We are a nonprofit social justice organization focused on building community power through equitable systems change. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the residents we serve in North End Detroit, Highland Park, and Hamtramck. To ground the discussion, I want to share some numbers. So according to the 2020 census, in the North End, 32% of residents live below the poverty line with a median household income of $34,000. In Hamtramck, the median income is $33,000 and 43% of residents live in poverty. In Highland Park, the median income is just $25,000 and 41% of residents live below the poverty level. Census tracts in these areas score in the 97th percentile and above on Eagle's My EJ screen. They carry energy burdens of between 7 and 12%, which is well above the 6% threshold considered unaffordable. Meanwhile, as you've heard, DTE is seeking yet another $456 million rate increase, which would add nearly $150 per year to the average residential electric bill. From 2020 to 2024, DTE's rate hikes have already cost households more than $365 additional annually. For families living on the margins, these increases are devastating. Many already face impossible choices, as you've heard, between paying the light bill or putting food in the fridge and keeping the power on or paying rent. Upfront costs and credit requirements make rooftop solar unattainable, leaving them locked into high bills and rising rates. The result is a double burden: economic instability compounded by unaffordable energy. This is precisely why My Solar for All mattered to us. With that support, NewCC planned to bring the benefits of solar energy directly to low-income households across our service area. By leveraging direct pay incentives, creative financing, and braided funding streams, we would have reduced household electricity bills by at least 30%. For families living paycheck to paycheck, that relief is life-changing. Canceling the program means more than the loss of dollars. It means the loss of hope and opportunity for families who need it most. It delays progress toward equity, climate resilience, and energy justice in the communities that have historically been left behind. I urge you to recognize the real-world consequences of this decision and act so our communities are not once again left paying the highest price. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague and ride or die partner, Sheila Dudley, who's a lifelong resident of Highland Park and can speak on their behalf.
Yes, thank you for allowing us to be here today to talk about this. So again, I am the Highland Park project manager at NCC. Highland Park is a city just 2.9 square miles with a population that is more than 85% African American. Nearly half of our residents, as you heard Mary say, live below the poverty line, and many households spend upwards of 10% of their income just to keep the lights on. My testimony here today is personal. Why? Because my family has lived in Highland Park since 1955, from its heyday to this day. And we did have a heyday. It was a phenomenal city to grow up in. It's where Henry Ford put the world on wheels. It's where Chrysler headquarters was once stationed in Highland Park, Michigan. All those things have since, fled and left us in pretty bad shape. So I sit here and I come before you today with both gratitude and grief. We are grateful that our community of Highland Park, where residents carry some of the highest utility burdens in the state, was awarded over $900,000 to bring relief, hope, and resilience through clean energy. Grief immediately sets in because after the award was celebrated and we assured families that help was on the way, the federal government clawed back those funds in one stroke, hope was lifted and then ripped away. The initiative at stake is called Solar Neighbors. It is not just about panels and batteries. It's about people. Phase 1 would have placed solar and storage systems on 2 trusted community hubs. The revenue, paired with federal incentives, would flow into a community energy fund. From that trust, families earning below 80% of AMI, the single mothers, the elders on fixed incomes, the workers barely making rent, would receive direct monthly payments to keep their lights on, to prevent shutoffs, to ease the crushing weight of utility bills. Phase 2 would expand that trust, adding more hub sites and eventually making rooftop solar possible for households who have never been able to access it. We're talking about renters, families in aging homes, people left out of the clean energy economy. That is not charity. It is a model of equity and resilience, a way to make sure the benefits of clean energy do not skip over the very communities who need them most. But now, because of bureaucratic reversals far, far, far outside of our control, those families in Highland Park are left asking, why does Highland Park always get promised help only to have it taken away? Why are we good enough to suffer the burden, but not good enough to share in the solutions? Senators, this clawback is not just a budget adjustment. It is a broken promise. It is a broken promise. And in communities like mine, broken promises carry generational weight. It's just not my generation, it's generational weight. Children overhear their parents whispering about another shutoff notice. Elders choose between medicine and electricity. Families brace themselves for yet another reminder that they are invisible in decisions made far, far, far away. I ask you today not to lament with us, but to stand with us, to help us restore what was lost, to use your voice and your influence to ensure that Highland Park and communities like ours across Michigan are not left in the dark. The people of my city are resilient. They do not want handouts. They want fairness. We want fairness. We want fairness. We want a chance to breathe, to thrive, to pass on to our children a future that is not defined by scarcity, but by possibility. Please help us ensure that the light we promised them is not extinguished by red tape. Help us turn this clawback into a comeback. I thank you for listening and for doing what's right for our communities. And before I close, I really do just want to say thank you to Senator Chang for all she does in our community. Every time we have a crisis, every time, we celebrate stuff, every time we do anything, she's front and center. I am so thankful to have you as our senator. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Chang?
Well, I'm just going to throw the gratitude right back at you. One of the things that I love about my district is that it's full of incredible community organizations and neighborhoods that are finding a way to make a way forward. And so I'm now getting emotional because, you talk about Highland Park and all that it has been through. And so I just am grateful for your leadership. And, I just recently had an ice cream social in the North End at MJ's North End Ice Cream Parlor in August, and electricity bills were definitely the first thing that people wanted to talk about. So this is very real, but I am encouraged by your persistence and the work that you're doing in the community, because I know that we will find a way forward.
Thank you so much.
Yep, Senator Baer?
I promise short. I just wanted to thank you also. That's okay. No, it's okay. Honestly, I've been through similar situations, and I know how much pain you're talking about, and when people are in desperation need of something, and there it is in front of them, and then have that just yanked away from you is literally a devastation. And I feel for you so strongly, and we will do whatever we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today and sharing your testimony. We have a short testimony from John Schleicher. Sorry if I didn't get that quite right, but you're welcome to come up and share some brief testimony. Just there's a button at the microphone stand, and if you touch that, you'll get a red light. Yep. You should get a red light, and that'll let you know you're ready to go. Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'll be very brief. Former chair of Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, which is representing about 300 plus congregations, tens of thousands of members represented there, and also Solar Faithful, which makes available to communities or trying to make available to communities, low-income communities and communities of color, of all faiths. As the name Interfaith implies, it's not only folks of a Christian background, but Muslim, Jewish, and other as well. I want to speak to a couple of examples. One is a congregation I served in my retirement. It was Grace on the east side of this community that was facing closure. The successor bishop after me invited me to go and work with them because they were looking maybe 2 more years. I listened to all of the families that would talk with me. They said it was going to the principal's office, but it turned out to be a really kind of joyful thing. And they started doing things. Last thing they did before they left is said, can we do solar? They did it. They had a 12-12 pitch. They got their first bill, except for staying on the grid with Board of Power and Light. Their bill was 0. The panels last for 30 years, probably, or more. I said, you guys have 30 more years in this community of poverty. So it just makes a huge difference when we can, as many others have said today, when we can alleviate that burden or at least reduce it significantly so that people can thrive and feel hopeful. I've also been a part of a church on the south side of Lansing, Redeemer Church, that serves 100-plus families, low-income families with daycare. They did solar now and are experiencing the relief that has given that community. Southside Community Center, Together Ministry, of Interfaith Power and Light banded congregations in the community, and we put solar on that community center, and they're effectively reduced to zero their electrical costs. In Detroit, the first Black congregation in Detroit was funded through our organization, and they're not only doing solar now, but they're also working on battery storage. So when storms come and the flooding comes, et cetera, they're going to be prepared to welcome the community. And that's kind of our vision throughout the state, both rural and urban, is that we not only can do solar to reduce costs, but provide those kind of safe havens for folks. What we know will be increasing devastation through the weather patterns because of the climate emergency. So I just thank you, and my final word is, as I have 55 years in the ministry now, and preached, thousands of times, the scriptures are clear that people that are judged most severely are those in authority who have neglected the needs of the poor. That's the primary reason why kingdoms fail, governments fail, is when the poor are neglected and oppressed. So I thank you for your time, and I'm hoping that with a forecast of litigation, we can restore what many people had hoped for. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today and sharing your testimony. Next, it is Justin Carpenter, Director of Policy for the Michigan Energy Innovation Business Council. Welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. For those that don't know me, my name is Justin Carpenter. I'm the Director of Policy for Michigan EIBC, a trade organization of advanced energy and mobility companies ranging from energy efficiency contractors and auto manufacturers to all scales of renewable generation and storage, including companies that were participants and applicants in the Michigan Solar for All projects. I wish I was before this committee to discuss a more optimistic subject, but I am grateful that the Senate has sought to address this matter. The EPA's decision to claw back contracted Solar for All funding is a significant blow to American small business amidst a flurry of hooks and jabs it has already taken over this year. I myself am not qualified to join in the ongoing discussion regarding the legality of the clawback of these already appropriated funds. Instead, I am here to discuss the impact of their loss, acting under the assumption, as businesses must, that these funds will be clawed back, a stance indicative of the damage that has already been done by the federal government's decision. The Michigan Solar for All program is designed to directly benefit Michiganders by investing in local energy projects that lower household energy cost by at least 20% as a requirement of the program. Not only would each household that benefits from this program save approximately $400 a year on their electricity bill, as Eagle stated earlier, but the program would also create hundreds of thousands of domestic construction and contracting jobs across the nation. It is a short-term investment in the long-term benefit of American communities. Across Michigan, 13 projects had already been awarded part of the state's $156 million share of this funding when the federal government decided to claw that money back. I have at times felt a bit like a broken record when I emphasize the basic economic principle that uncertainty is bad for business, but this goes a step further. This is not uncertainty due to a general inability to predict the future or from the probable recession indicators that have come from recent jobs reports or other sources. It is an action that results in complete distrust in the federal government. Why would American businesses undertake a contract with their government if the capital required and promised to the project can be stripped away without warning? What precedent does this set for new contracts that are entered into under this administration if the next can eliminate them just as easily? The wrongful withdrawal of Solar for All is a withdrawal of commitment to American energy customers and businesses at a time when it was most crucial. As demand for energy grows at a rate that is unseen in many of our lifetimes and unemployment creeps upward, it is the average American who will shoulder the burden of this reneged promise. With consumer electricity rates now expected to rise by up to 18% over the next decade, the average household will pay an extra $170 each year, in part due to tariffs, repeal of tax credits, and clawback of promised federal funding such as Solar for All. It is clear that we are on our own, and I ask the state to consider doing everything in its power to mitigate the harm to jobs, small businesses, and ratepayers that this decision has done. Thank you, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you very much. Can you, you rattled off 3 factors just now. Can you repeat those again? It was tariffs, rate increases, and the clawbacks, right?
The tariffs, repeal of tax credits, and the clawbacks.
So is your expectation that tariffs are going to raise costs?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see any quick questions. Yep, Senator Bear.
Quick, just to clarify and ask you again about the expected increase. I think we thought it was more than $300 a year. What are you thinking?
The expected increase just due to increasing demand, we're looking at around 18% of increase in demand, which is probably going to end up being about $170 a year for a household. Again, kind of hard to fully predict what that demand is going to look like. I mean, as we've seen, you know, the AI boom has been massive in the past couple of years as we see a lot of data centers get built out and just other
demands are increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can't, it's hard to predict right now. It could be a lot worse even, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Senator Shea.
Thank you. So you're a business council, and I think one of the things that I'm thinking about, I heard 700 jobs lost from this $156 million being yanked out of our economy. And these are tax dollars we already paid to Washington. They were coming home to invest in our state. Do you have any sense of what the multiplier effects of $156 million investment in our economy and those 700 jobs could be? And I realize it may not be numbers you have, but if you have them, I'm interested.
I don't have those numbers at hand. I will say that, I mean, generally speaking, those numbers go a lot further, you know, given that they actually get invested, of course. And I think the one thing I will say is the impact is a little wider than just the construction jobs lost. I mean, this program stands to help increase jobs for the companies that get awarded these projects too, right? I mean, it's a big deal to get a project like this. It might mean the difference between your ability to expand or not and hire more people. And for some of our folks that have done a lot of work already, I mean, I can't speak for any one of our members in particular, but I know that, a lot of them have spent a lot of time. They've spent a lot of money on these applications, and it's just gone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Greatly appreciate you being here with us today. Next, we have Ben Polson, who is the State Government Affairs Director, and Bentley Johnson, who is the Federal Government Affairs Director for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you guys all for being here today. This is obviously a very important issue. We've heard a lot of impassioned testimony. As you mentioned, I am our State Government Affairs Director. Bentley here is our Federal Government Affairs Director. And Michigan LCV represents thousands of members across our state, from Detroit to Sheboygan, and all of them pay electric bills. Now, our mission here is simple. We want to make sure that Michiganders have affordable, clean, and reliable energy future, and that their voices are heard both in Lansing and in Washington. We work very closely together. The big difference is I have a much shorter commute. Took me about 3 miles down the river trail to get here today. His usually involves like a plane and a train in order to get to D.C. But he spent hundreds of hours educating federal officials and Michiganders about the effects of federal action on our energy prices here in Michigan. Solar for All is certainly not the only federal action that is affecting our prices. And today we want to give you a clear picture of how all of those actions can affect our energy prices here at home.
Yeah, so let's start with the overall federal picture. H.R. 1, the budget reconciliation law, included major eliminations and reductions to investments in energy, efficiency, and access to new technologies. Programs that Michigan families, businesses, and communities were already tapping into and we're counting on for the future, as you've heard. Unfortunately, these actions have serious consequences, and here's just a couple of examples. So tax credits and rebates for homes, communities, and businesses to help save energy or produce their own electricity were slashed or completely ended as soon as the end of this month, including tax credits like 25C for new heat pumps for heating and cooling, new insulation and weatherization, as well as electrical panel upgrades, and tax credit 25D for rooftop solar and battery storage, all phased out by the end of this year. As well as tools to upgrade our electric grid were rolled back, cutting the amount of new energy we can generate by about half, which weakens our reliability, increases reliance on foreign energy, and hikes our energy costs. And so many different energy experts are analyzing the new budget law to estimate impacts to energy costs, and the results are staggering. Across the country, households will pay $170 more for their energy bills each year by 2035. But here in Michigan, estimates are even worse. You may hear more about this with additional testimony, but according to policy analyst Energy Innovation, households are expected to pay $320 more for their energy bills each year by 2035. So these cuts aren't just abstract line items, they're cuts to the advancement and deployment of advanced energy technologies, really new energy sources that can be stood up quickly and cheaply, and they're cuts to household budgets, making it more expensive to do home improvements that can bring down energy bills. And so the net effect is reduced competition in the energy market, reduced options to meet growing energy needs, and will ultimately lead to higher energy bills for families and small businesses across Michigan.
And because Michigan has been incredibly successful in winning competitive grants that benefit local communities, the consequences of the cost increases from the federal reconciliation bill will be felt hardest here. In 2023, thanks to new clean energy and efficiency incentive programs, more than 117,000 Michigan households claimed over $134 million in tax credits for energy-saving upgrades. Those tax credits used to purchase more efficient air conditioning, heating systems, add insulation, weatherize homes, rooftop solar, and battery storage. Just one of the tax credit programs impacted by the reconciliation bill, the 45L program, has supported the construction of nearly 350,000 efficient new homes nationwide and cut homeowner energy bills on average for those homes by about $450 per year. Now, many of those tax credits are set to expire at the end of this year. And obviously, we've heard a lot about the Solar for All program. It bears repeating that all the investments in the Solar for All program are required to slash household energy costs by 20%, lowering electricity bills for each household that benefits by $400 each year.
Yeah, and it also bears repeating, where the dollars are going from the cuts. And the big budget bill is a major redistribution of our tax dollars. The cuts and elimination of the programs mean that fewer dollars are dedicated to these lowering of household and small business energy costs, and instead, more dollars are now flowing into general tax relief at the upper end of the wealth spectrum. The new law extends and expands several tax preferences that disproportionately benefit the ultra-wealthy, billionaires, and larger corporations in particular. And in addition, there are major concerns that the new spending and loss of tax revenue over the 10-year time period of the law will add trillions of dollars to our national budget deficit, $3.4 trillion to be exact, according to the Independent Congressional Budget Office. And so unfortunately, the federal administration is going way beyond the cuts and rescissions in the new law in H.R. 1. They're terminating programs and benefits without congressional approval. And so we've heard about Solar for All in that case, but the same thing is happening with programs like community change grants. And a bunch of Michigan communities have won community change grants, projects that do things like help improve the energy efficiency of low-income housing, churches, and food pantries, monitor harmful air pollution, and create resilience hubs that can serve as emergency shelters during extreme weather and power outages.
And Senator Polanki, I really appreciate you bringing up that these cuts are coming at the exact wrong time. The Michigan families spend a higher share of their income on energy compared to the national average, especially in rural and historically marginalized communities. Electricity rates are rising in nearly every state because of rising demand and severe weather strains on the grid. In fact, in Michigan, we have had 22 climate disasters that cost more than $1 billion over the last 5 years, including disasters like the ice storm from this year that we are still paying to recover from. So losing programs like Solar for All, like some of these tax credits, it hits those communities the hardest, and it slows down our broader transition to a modern, reliable grid.
And so we heard from Justin on the missed opportunities for job creation. You know, the canceled programs would have created hundreds of local jobs in solar installation, maintenance, workforce training. You know, you heard about even roofing jobs to have those enabling upgrades to be able to add solar. You can get your roof fixed, and those are great jobs as well. Opportunities, you know, that would have benefited small businesses and energized local economies. And we're seeing information come out in Michigan. Factory closures and construction halts as a result of federal energy policies are expected to eliminate 17,000 jobs over the next 5 years. And so in order to provide relief to Michiganders struggling with high energy costs, we encourage all members of this committee, the Michigan legislature, and the federal delegation to do the following. Number one, advocate for the reinstatement of federal funding or similar programs that expand access to energy. Number two, support state-level solutions that can mitigate the loss of federal dollars, enhance ratepayer protections, and lower energy bills, particularly for low-income households. And number three, ensure that programs with already obligated federal funding are implemented fully, preventing sudden cancellation that hurt families, local economies, and the research that supports evidence-based policymaking.
And so, as you've heard from many of us, the termination of the Solar for All program, other promising programs, and the federal reconciliation bill, the net result is higher energy bills in every district in Michigan. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yep. Thank you for the compelling testimony. And Senator Baer, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you both for being here. It's just hard to take, actually, you know, one after the other, and it's all true, and we know that it's all true. So it's like a horror movie kind of crashing down on us, and when you actually look at the whole picture. So one of the challenges for us is the whole picture, to be honest. So, and you encourage us to make it up, make up the difference, all the losses that we have from the cuts coming from the federal government. Of course, the problem is it's happening in every one of our departments. And almost everything we do impacts lower income people. Again and again, the cuts coming from the federal government are hurting our communities, hurting our people in Highland Park, and hurting our people all over the state. And we want to make up the difference. We want to find a way to do that. Do you have any suggestions? And I know that's a huge monster question, but anything to help alleviate, to backfill, to, you know, any ideas at all on how we can make this better or do more of what we need to do?
I mean, I think it is a very big question, and Bentley can talk about the huge numbers that, you know, you're trying to make up for here. I think members of this committee have worked on legislation that could help us plan the grid more smartly, that would help us reduce costs. I think we've seen bipartisan legislation on bills that would increase energy competition, and I know you are all working on a budget and passed a budget earlier that included some funds for weatherization programs that would do some of these programs, and you know, encourage you to continue to work on that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would just add that you know, there are programs right now that unfortunately are unlikely to be continued because of these clawbacks. But there are things like the home energy rebates, the home electrification and appliance rebates that the state is running now. And so people that are looking to make home improvements that can lower their energy bills, there are some tools out there now. I think the challenge in the future is, of course, with the federal government stepping away from that role, how do we make up the gap? I think there can be some exciting, you know, planning, and we've got some of the programs stood up. How can we just get funding sources to them so we can continue our rebate programs and things like that? But it is, you're right, Senator, it's a huge gap to make up. One state can't do it by itself when we're seeing these cuts across every department, across the entire country.
Senator Shink?
Thank you. When you talk about these clawbacks impacting the economy in a negative way and losing 17,000 jobs, which is beyond this program that we're discussing right now. It sounds almost like a recession creation program that the federal government is pushing here, that they're trying to create a recession. I know you can't answer that, but I guess I wonder, when you're talking about these jobs, do you have a sense of like what kinds of jobs are being lost?
Yeah, I would add that, on the manufacturing side, just the uncertain business environment makes it really hard, as you heard from Justin and Energy Innovation Business Council, makes it really hard to plan. And a lot of these industries need 5-10 years to be able to plan and know what the policy landscape looks like. So the whiplash back and forth really hurts. I would also say that some of the clean energy jobs of tomorrow are already here in Michigan today. I talked about the roofers, people replacing windows, HVAC contractors, electricians. We've got these great jobs that can't be shipped overseas. The opportunity with the tax credits, with the Solar for All, with the grant programs, was to grow those jobs and increase the wages and expand that opportunity. And so I think even beyond losing jobs, I think there's also just, we won't know the growth that we could have had with expansion of those jobs that are here today and their family sustaining jobs. And I saw it in my own life, where I did some of these projects at my own house to lower my energy jobs, and I had a really good experience with a unionized company that was close by that walked me through my options and heating and cooling options and insulation, and my energy bills have gone down, and they seemed like really good jobs that I appreciated having right in my local area.
Thank you. So I think what I'm hearing is that the money that was coming through the federal grants, which comes from tax dollars that all of Michiganders paid, and it was just coming back, it's creating jobs, lowering people's costs, and creating opportunity for people in Michigan. So it doesn't seem like there's any good reason to cut it. I know billionaires are getting tax cuts, but can you talk a little more about who stands to benefit from how this federal bill limits the development of renewable energy sources?
I think what you've seen is, one, you've mentioned where the money did go, and obviously those individuals stand to benefit, as well as when we have reduced competition in the energy sector from these renewable resources, then those sources, the status quo, benefit from that, right? They have less competition. We're forced to rely on those different fossil fuel interests, and we can, it doesn't have the competition effect to drive down prices.
Apologies, Senator Schenck, but we've got one more testimony to go here, and we don't have much time left. We've got a hard stop in a few minutes here. So apologies, but I know the gentleman will stick around and be available for questions, and do appreciate your testimony very much this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. And we have Doug Jester, who is the managing partner for 5 Lakes, to close us out. Doug, sorry to have you on the tail end of the time limit here, but we know we can hear from you, and appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Senators. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I'm going to just very briefly talk a little bit more about the grants situation. You should have a handout that I prepared, and then I want to focus a little bit more on the broader implications of the kinds of things that you were just hearing about in H.R. 1 on energy costs here in Michigan. So I don't need to tell you any more about Solar for All. That is covered here. But for the last 3 years, we at 5 Lakes Energy have had some modest support from foundations to help lower capacity organizations in Michigan seek these kinds of grants. And we've helped with 55 applications for about $135 million. 65 million of which was awarded. And that included about 45 million in community change grants and several other things. The community change grants are described on the second page of the material that I handed out. And those were awarded and contracted, and work had begun when those were canceled. There was no provision in the contracts that would have just allowed or justified the cancellation. It was just done, leaving, fortunately, none of the organizations had cash outlays for the programs that they were unable to recover, but they had prepared to deliver on these fairly large projects, built up capacity, and were preparing to do a lot of good work for their communities. And those were withdrawn with all of the sorts of consequences that you've heard about on Solar for All. And then there was a program of financing for clean energy projects called Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that was intended to provide, it was a green bank type of financing, ongoing funding for many years for people to do these kinds of projects where the project would pay for itself in either incremental revenue or avoided costs, so they could afford to do the projects. And those also have been canceled. So at this point, much of the promise of the IRA to help lower income communities and households has been withdrawn. And much of it, in my view, contrary to law, certainly contrary to the contracts that people had entered into. In addition to the various grants that have been canceled or terminated, there were a lot of changes in tax provisions and things of that sort, which you just heard about. I want to lay out some of the consequences. For the most part, I'm speaking of work here that we've done in collaboration with Energy Innovation, who were cited earlier. We worked with them 3 times previously on modeling the effects on Michigan's economy of clean energy policy. And let me see if I can operate this. There we go. Yeah. So in addition to the grants, the HR1 eliminated funding and tax credits for clean energy manufacturing facilities. Thanks to support from the Michigan legislature and the work of the Whitmer administration, we punched above our weight in bringing funds to Michigan for clean energy manufacturing. A lot of that has been withdrawn. It eliminated incentives for electric vehicle purchases. It eliminated the enforceability of CAFE standards, increased federal leasing, and reduced royalties for fossil fuel production, and provided for early phase-out, tightened requirements and so on for clean energy tax credits, and then the rescission of grants that we've been talking about. And then in addition to those, we're dealing with changes in vehicle emissions rules, cancellation of contracts and loans other than the ones that we've been discussing, changes in regulations and processes intended to make clean energy projects or renewable energy projects more difficult, emergency orders to continue operating, retiring fossil fuel plants such as the Campbell plant, tariffs and import restrictions. I'm going to talk a little bit about our modeling results, specifically on HR1, not including these other effects, but they are also very important.
And I really apologize, Mr. Jester, we've got to wrap up in 2 minutes.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
So we are going to see limited change up to 2030 in what we expected because a lot of the changes take some time to have their effects. But post-2030, we will see significant increases in the costs of energy here in Michigan. I just summarize it as, for residential customers, a lot of their energy costs are in the utility delivery of energy. Their rates are going to go up something in the order of 3 to 6%. For business customers, large customers where most of the costs are in the energy itself, we're going to see increases in electricity costs more in the 9% range, and natural gas prices more in the 6% range. Those are the consequences of all of these different effects flowing through the economy. And the effect on Michigan's gross domestic product and on jobs, we think that there'll be about $32 billion loss of Michigan gross domestic product over the next 10 years. And the employment that in the whole economy, not just in these sectors, will be about 21,000 less in 2030 and about 26,000 less in 2035. So these are pretty profound consequences. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you for that, and appreciate your testimony here today. I don't see any other questions, so appreciate it you being here. Thank you. There being no further business before the committee and without objection, the Senate Committee on Energy and Environment is adjourned.